Good day, Doctor. I'm Gok Shipei, number matrix 296217. Today I'll be presenting my individual assignment, which the topic is Income and Expenditure Dynamics of UUM Students for a Consumer's Behavior Perspective. For the background of study, there are strong relationship between the income levels and consumption pattern. In Malaysia, the inflation and increased cost of living directly impact the students' consumption pattern. Students allocate most of their income to essentials, limiting the discretionary spending. And the common source of their income is parental support, scholarships, part-time jobs, and loans like PTPTN. Financial constraint highlights the importance of effective management strategies. And next is about the problem statement. University students' consumption patterns are a significant area of social economic research. Different income levels and sources directly affect the consumption pattern of the students. Failure to manage income can lead to financial problems affecting the academic performance and development. So understanding income and expenditure dynamics is crucial for effective policies formulations. In this research, we have 4 major research questions, which are: what are the demographic characteristics of UUM students? Second, do differences in gender influence the income factor, price factor, and preferences factor for consumption pattern among UUM students? Third, does the primary source of income influence the income factor, price factor, and preferences factor for consumption pattern among the UUM students? Lastly, do income factor, price factor, and preferences factor have a significant relationship with consumption patterns among the UUM students? And for the research objective, the first is examine the demographic characteristics of UUM students. Second, examine whether the differences in gender influence the income, price, and preferences factor for consumption pattern among the UUM students. Third, examine whether the differences in the primary sources of income influence the income, price, and preferences factor for the consumption pattern among the UUM student. And lastly, examine the relationship between the income factor, price factor, and preferences factor with the consumption pattern among the UUM students. Now I'll be talking about the theoretical review of the literature review. The theory of demands explains the relationship between the price of goods and their demand. In this theory, students' consumption is influenced by the income level, price, and preferences. The non-price factors such as preferences and utility also plays a significant role. According to Cobian in 2020, economic downturn and anti-pandemic measures reduces the individual's incomes and result in decreased consumptions among the individuals. Next, the theory of income factor examines the impact of income on consumption's behavior. The higher income level leads to the increased spending on goods and services, and students usually rely on multiple sources of income, such as scholarships, allowance, or part-time jobs. According to Keiteler and Faustino in 2011, the income levels directly affect the choice between necessities and non-essentials. And for the theory of price factor, this theory tells about the students tend to prioritize affordable goods due to the limited budget, and discounts and promotions are significant motivators for purchases. This theory also suggests the students are price-sensitive customers. According to Graciola in 2018, the lower price can attract more people to consume. The theory of preferences factor highlights the roles of individuals and social preferences in consumption decisions. In this theory, preferences are shaped by personal taste, social influence, and cultural norms. Students often align their choice with peer recommendations. This theory also emphasized the importance of perceived value and satisfaction. DeLine in 2014 suggested that personal taste largely influenced the dietary choice among the students, while the theory of consumption pattern focuses on understanding how individuals allocate their incomes across the various needs. In this theory, students' consumption patterns are influenced by income sources, price sensitivity, and preferences. Financial constraints often dictate prioritizations of spending on the basic needs. The theory underlines the dynamic nature of spending behavior among the students. And according to Zahra and Anoraga in 2021, the students affected by the cultural will spend a high proportion expenditures into goods. For the empirical review of literature review, the first is income factors that shows scholarships often cover only 60% of expenses, pushing students to seek additional financing or loans. The irregular income from part-time work complicates the financial management despite flexible work opportunities like Grab and Shopee Pay. For the price factors, the implementations of GST in Malaysia increased commodity price by 12%, forcing the students to focus on necessities over discretionary spending. The rising tuition fee and textbook fees also led students to allocate more resources to academic necessities and seek cost-saving alternatives such as second-hand books. Next is the preferences factor. Students prioritize convenient and affordable food, often choosing the fast food due to the time constraints. And social media heavily influence students' purchasing decisions by offering product review, promotions, and friend recommendations, thereby building trust and making purchases easier. Lastly, for the consumption pattern, food and beverage spending is the largest expenditure categories for students, accounting for more than 40% of their budget, with a preference for fast food due to the accessibility and time constraint. E-commerce and food delivery platforms such as Shopee, Lazada, GrabFood, and Foodpanda also are popular among the students for their affordability and convenience, despite often leading to higher overall expenses. And next, for the methodology, for the conceptual framework, there is one dependent variable, which is the consumption pattern, and three independent variable, which is income, price, and preferences factor. The research design is giving questionnaire, which is the Google form to the students, and the type of study is quantitative. The sources of data is from the undergraduate student of University Utara Malaysia, which is UUM, and the unit of analysis is individual students. The population frame is total 21,281 undergraduate students across the COB, Colgate, and CIS, and the sample and sampling technique. The sample size is 377, according to Craigie and Morgan in 1970, which is the convenience sampling. The questionnaire design have 5 sections, which is section A, the demographic profiles, that contain 6 questions, and section B, C, D, E, the independent and dependent variables that contain 40 questions. The Likert scale is 5-point scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and this used to measure the attitudes or opinions towards the statements. The analysis tools using is SPSS, and it used to analyze the descriptive analysis, independent t-test, one-way ANOVA, and lastly, the multiple regressions. Now I will talk about the data analysis and finding. In this chapter, we will talk about the demographic background collected using the questionnaires, the descriptive analysis, and hypothesis testing about the independent sample t-test, one-way ANOVA, and multiple regressions. For the demographic background, there are total 230 respondents, and 86 of it is male, and 144 are female. And for the age of respondent, there are 37 of it is 20 and below, 120 is the most, which are 21 to 22, 61 is from 23 to 24, and the less is the 25 and above, which consist of 12 respondents. Next, for the most common current year of study is year 3 with 119 respondents. Second most is year 4 with 43 respondents, followed by year 1 with 36 respondents and year 2 with 32 respondents. Next, for the majority of respondents are from College of Business, which is 121 respondents, and the second most is Colgate with 62 respondents, and the fewest one is CIS with 47 respondents. Next, for the monthly allowance or income of respondents, there are more respondents receive a less monthly allowance compared to the respondent receive high monthly allowance. The largest group of respondents receive between 401 to 600 per month, which are 68 respondents. The second most is for the category 201 to 400, which have 58 respondents. And it followed by the category 601 to 800 with the 39 respondents. Next is 801 and above with 34 respondents. And lastly, 31 respondents receive 200 and below per month. For the primary sources of allowance or income, most of them receive from PTPTN, which have 83 respondents, and second most is from parents with 67 respondents. The third is JPA with 34 respondents, and next is MARA with 26 respondents. Lastly is the part-time work with 20 respondents. For the descriptive analysis, the mean score is regarded as low if it is less than 3 and high if it is greater than 5. It will be regarded as moderate if it is between 3 and 5. In this study, the mean score for income, price, and preferences or consumption pattern are below 5, which range from 3.9930 to 4.1143. This means that the respondents generally rated the factors moderate rather than strongly high or low. The income factor have the highest of the means, which is 4.1143, and the lowest is from the preferences factor, which the mean is 3.7039, while the standard deviations for this study is between 0.61569 and 0.76833. The highest for the preference standard deviation is the preferences factor with the standard deviation of 0.76833, and the lowest is consumption pattern with the standard deviation of 0.61569. Now we will start with the first hypothesis testing, which is the independent sample t-test. It will be used to test the hypothesis to address the second objective. The first independent sample t-test is about the income factor. The null hypothesis tells that there is no significant differences between genders in income factors for consumption pattern among the UUM students, and the alternative hypothesis tells that there is a significant difference between genders in income factors for consumption pattern among UUM students. For the income factors, the male respondents means is score slightly higher than the female respondents. The assumptions of equal variance was made as indicated by Levin's test, which the p-value is 0.136, which more than 0.1. However, the t-test results show no significant difference between genders, where the p-value is 0.763, which more than 0.1. Hence, the null hypothesis is not rejected. Next is for the price factor. The null hypothesis B is there's no significant differences between genders in price factor for consumption pattern amongst UUM students, and the alternative hypothesis B is there is a significant difference between gender in price factors for consumption pattern among UUM students. For the price factor, the means of male respondents are slightly lower than the female respondents. The equal variances were assumed which the p-value is 0.880 and is more than 0.1. And the t-test result confirmed no significant differences between the genders with the p-value of 0.927, which is more than 0.1. Therefore, the null hypothesis is not rejected. This indicates that the price sensitivity in consumption pattern does not vary significance between the genders among UUM students. Next is for the preferences factor with the null hypothesis, which is there is no significant difference between genders in preferences factor for consumption pattern among UUM students, and the alternative hypothesis, which is there is a significant difference between genders in preferences factor for consumption pattern among UUM students. In this preferences factor, the male respondents means score higher than the female respondents, and the assumptions of equal variances was made, which the p-value of 0.261, which is more than 0.1, but the t-test result no significant difference between genders with the p-value of 0.001, which is less than 0.1. Therefore, null hypothesis C is rejected. This suggests that the preferences in consumption pattern significantly differ between the male and female students. Next, we will continue with the one-way ANOVA, which performed to test the hypothesis 1 and 2 to address the third objective. For the income factor, the null hypothesis is the means of income factor across all primary sources of incomes are equal, and the alternative hypothesis is at least one primary source of income group has a different mean for income factor. The ANOVA results for the income factor shows a p-value of 0.052, which is less than p-value of 0.1. And the f-value of 2.392 indicates some variations between groups, and this variation is statistically significant at the level 0.1 level. Therefore, the null hypothesis is rejected, suggesting that at least one primary source of income group has a different mean for the income factor. For the price factor, the null hypothesis is the means of price factor across all primary sources of income are equal, and the alternative hypothesis is at least one primary source of income group has a different mean for price factor. The results show no significant differences across the primary source of income group where the p-value is 0.397 more than 0.1, and the f-value of 1.022 suggests the minimal variability between the groups, further supporting the conclusion that price sensitivity in consumption pattern does not differ significantly among the students based on their primary source of income. Therefore, the null hypothesis is not rejected. And for the preferences factor, the null hypothesis is the means of preferences factor across all primary sources of income are equal, and the alternative hypothesis is at least one primary source of income group has a different mean for preferences factor. The ANOVA results shows that no statistically significant differences across the primary source of income group with the p-value of 0.164, which is more than 0.1, and f-values of 1.646 indicates some degree of variations between groups, but this variation does not reach the threshold for statistical significance. Therefore, the null hypothesis is not rejected, suggesting the preferences in consumption pattern are consistent across students with different primary source of income. Next, for the multiple regressions, the equations for model is 0.741 plus 0.170 income plus 0.372 price and plus 0.280 preferences. For the income factor, the hypothesis tested is the null hypothesis, which the income factor has no significant relationship with the consumption pattern, and alternative hypothesis is the income factor has a significant relationship with the consumption pattern. The analysis shows that the income factor has a coefficient of 0.170 with a p-value of 0.008, which is less than the significant level of 0.1. So this indicates that the income factors significantly influence the consumption pattern of UUM students. Hence, the null hypothesis is rejected and the alternative hypothesis is accepted. The hypothesis tested for the price factor is the null hypothesis, which the price factor has no significant relationship with the consumption pattern, and the alternative hypothesis with the price factor has a significant relationship with the consumption pattern. The result shows a coefficient of 0.372 for the price factor and p-value of 0.000, which is less than 0.1. This indicates that it is a statistically significant relationship. Hence, the null hypothesis is rejected. The higher positive coefficient suggests that the price factor has a stronger impact on the consumption pattern compared to the income factor. And for the preferences factor, the null hypothesis is the preferences factor has no significant relationship with the consumption pattern, and the alternative hypothesis is the preferences factor has a significant relationship with the consumption pattern. The preferences factor has a coefficient of 0.280 and the p-value of 0.000. This shows that there is a significant relationship with the consumption pattern. So the null hypothesis is rejected and the alternative hypothesis is accepted. In conclusion, this study has achieved its objective by examining the relationships between the income, price, and preferences and the consumption pattern among the UUM students at University Utara Malaysia, UUM. And the suggestions for the future study is expand the sample size and include diverse students populations. We should also investigate the external factors such as inflation. Lastly, we have to conduct the long-term studies. So that's all from me. Thank you.